everybody, Mark Pescatore from Systems Contractor News. I'm here with Jennifer Broeckling from Murphy Business Sales, and we're here to talk a little business. Well, specifically, we're talking about selling a business. It's not always an easy process. It's not always an easy thing to go through. So I'm going to start my first question with you, Jennifer, with a rhyme, a little poem. When do you know that it's time to go?
Ooh. Mark, thanks so much. It's good to hear from you and good to be here. When do you know that it's time to go? Gosh, we hear a lot from different sellers in the AV space and beyond the AV space. And there's usually three reasons why people say, hey, you know what, I'm kind of thinking about selling my business. And the first one is you're just kind of done, they're ready for retirement. They're ready for a new chapter of their life. And they feel like they've just kind of run their course professionally and they're ready to do something different, whether that's getting into a new space or sitting on a beach and drink Mai Tais, right? The second reason is sometimes the business needs more growth or more gas in the tank than you have to give it, right? So if people find that the business, they know that it needs to go somewhere and they just don't have the energy or the time or the inclination to go there, but they know that's what the business needs, that's probably a good time to step away and transition. And then finally, the third reason that a lot of people will step away is because they get people knocking on their door and saying, hey, have you thought about selling your business? And that gets the wheels turning, right? As to what they might be able to do if they cash in and do something different. So sometimes it's a matter of when the business is ready to be sold and not necessarily when a business owner is ready to step away. So any one of those three things can really trigger knowing that it's time to think about selling the business.
Okay, so yes, so all sorts of ideas as to why this could happen. But let's say you find yourself in that situation. Okay, I've made the decision. No matter what the reasoning was, I'm going to sell. Let's just say you want to sell to a family member or maybe key employees in the business. Does that complicate the process or does it make it easier?
Mark, it can do both. It can make it
Oh,
easier and
perfect.
it can
That's
complicate
what I wanted to
things. So, if we look at the family dynamic first, selling to a family member can be incredibly rewarding. And a lot of business owners have just dreamt about passing it on to the next generation. And sometimes it was passed on to them and they feel an obligation to keep things in the family. But really, there's also kind of some messy stuff that goes on with family dynamics. It can be concerns. The kids may have concerns about work-life balance, especially if you've been a little bit of a workaholic your whole life. They've seen that and grown up with that. There can be a lot of pressure to perform. There can be feelings of, hey, this is mom or dad's business, but I don't want that to be mine. I have my own dreams and ambitions and goals and likes and dislikes, and I want to try to blaze my own path. And sometimes kids just feel ill-equipped. They're just not trained yet to do the things that they would need to be good at in order to take the helm, and they know that. And so that can be some uncomfortable conversations at Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever around the table because the kids don't always want it or feel equipped to that. So, but in the case that the kids do want it, then you've got the choice of, are you going to gift the business or are you going to sell them the business? And, that really comes down to personal preference. Plenty of people will gift a business, in which case, you need to be thinking about taking advantage of that lifetime exemption with the IRS and getting a certified valuation to make sure that you're doing everything above board. Related to that. Or if you decide to sell the business, that can also be good in terms of, having the kids pay for something over time, even if you don't maybe give them full market value, right? And that can be a good way to supplement retirement as well. So, the family dynamic, there's some kind of messy things, but that can also be really great and rewarding. Selling to a key employee can also be really great because the business is a known quantity for them. They're working in the business, they know it better than anybody, and that can be a really great, smooth transition. The big gotcha that we usually see on people that want to sell to key employees, though, is money. So most people aren't going to gift a business to a key employee, although I guess you could. They're going to sell it, but putting 10 or 20% down on a business for a key employee is often beyond their reach. And so, as long as all of the parties are creative, they're trusting, they're open to some unique structures to try and get around that. Very often we can get that done, but most of the time it's the ability to finance it. And when we're looking at things like seller financing, depending on which way the wind is blowing with the SBA, if it's a loan that can be banked by the SBA, at least right now, a seller is going to be on the hook for the seller note as a guarantor for 10 years. That's a really tough pill to swallow. So, I think whether you look at a family member or a key employee first, those can be great avenues out of the gate. But starting the conversation early, making sure that you're training and planning for down payments and things like that, defining roles, key expectations, things like that, and getting your professional advisors involved early is really the key to making those two things happen if you want to try that route first.
Yeah, just like you said, it can be easier, but you mentioned a whole lot of
Yeah,
complications there. So something you got to be careful
for
of.
sure.
All right, so we've already looked at those avenues, but you've made the decision. I'm gonna sell my business. Now what?
Yeah. So uh, for most people, most sellers, that's really a very pivotal decision for them, right? And when they make that decision, they want to get started with the process because most of our entrepreneurs are activators as well. Um, Ideally, there would be a little bit of a runway. So if you're thinking about possibly selling at some point in the next couple of years, I would encourage you to reach out to us and your other advisors early so that we can start to stage that and prepare it and get ready for sale, right? But for some people, they just make the decision and they're just ready to move on it. And that's perfectly fine too. Um, you want to make sure that you're very confidential in this process, though. This is not like selling a house or selling a building or something like that, where you hire a realtor and you put it on Facebook and you shout it from the rooftops. It's not like that. We don't want to harm the business.
Why not?
Well, we don't want to.
I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
we're not. We don't want to harm the business while we're trying to sell it. So if you think about it in terms of being an employee, if you know that your business owner, that your boss is thinking about selling your business, you're a little bit nervous about that.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I see where
Yeah,
you're going with that. That's for
who's
sure.
gonna buy it? Do they want to retain me? Is my, should I go buy that house? I don't know what's going to happen to my employer, right? Your customers get worried about warranties and guarantees, and are they going to be around to service the sale? Your vendors are worried about getting paid, so they start getting a little bit tight on terms, things like that. A lot of bad things happen. And when your competitors find out that you're for sale, things really get nasty. So, a lot of bad things happen when it is widely known that a business is for sale. You don't want to do that. Um, I always tell people, listen, make us your first call. We will help talk you through what that process looks like, maybe help you determine the likely selling price for your business so you know whether or not you can even afford to do it right now. You may want to, but can you afford to? Talk about the different dynamics and things like that. And then if we all decide that it's a good time to go to market, then we can involve your attorneys, accountants, your coaches, things like that, and get your advisors involved in the process. But before you get too married to the idea of selling, you really want to talk to somebody like us, a business broker or an M&A advisor, and find out if it really is feasible and what you might get from a sale to make sure you don't outlive your money. Like if you're trying to retire, you don't want to sell and then find out that you've got to go back and work at Walmart in 5 years. That's not a good idea, you know. Um, so we just want to make
Well,
sure
one
that
thing.
you're taking a holistic approach to this and that you're walking in with your eyes wide open before you start a process like that.
Well, you've touched on a couple of things we've talked about previously, and that's the seller's
Mhm.
journey. That's something that you and I have discussed
Sure.
before. What is the seller's journey, and how important is it to follow that process?
Yeah. So the seller's journey, and it's a document we actually put out because we really feel strongly about educating buyers and sellers about the process. So we have the buyer's journey and the seller's journey, right? And this is the process that we take clients through. It's kind of our secret sauce that we've developed over the last 15 years. And it's a process that helps people understand what it is they're getting ready to embark on because it's, like I said, very different from selling your house or selling a building or something like that. It's a whole different process. So if you like, I can kind of walk you through that at a very high level, Mark. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, very high
Okay,
level.
that sounds great. So, at first we talk about the discovery process and, what it looks like to sell and then determine a likely selling price. That's a really important process for us because when we look at our history and we look at our valuations versus our actual sale prices over the last 15 years, they've been accurate plus or minus 3%. So you may not love the number, or you may love the number that we give you, but you can really take it to the bank in terms of being accurate. Um, so from there, we look at very high level what our go to market strategies would look like. We sign an engagement letter together, and then we start the marketing process. And we're going to market nationally and blindly. So nobody's going to know that it's you, right? That's really important. And we're going to highlight things that are important to AV buyers like recurring service contracts, certifications, government contracts, things like that that are really important in the AV space. We're going to highlight that so the buyers really understand that. Then once we identify that ideal buyer for you, and there may be multiple, we may look at multiple ideal buyers, we're going to process their letters of intent. We're going to help you make your decisions. We're going to go all the way through the due diligence process using a virtual deal room and help walk you through that. We're going to help the buyer get the financing that they need if that's a component of the transaction. And then we're going to handle all of the closing. We're going to coordinate with your attorneys and your accountants and make sure that everything's handled correctly from an escrow standpoint, all of our closing documents and things like that, and get you all the way through the closing table and even a little bit of post-closing support to help with the transition and the integration plans because we have seen it all in our 15 years. And just like we wouldn't be able to run your business, this is our business. This is all we do every day is help with business transactions like this.
See, this is why you go to Jennifer and not me for
No,
selling your business because
I'm sure you need
they
a
know
lot of
what they're
things,
doing.
Mark.
But let's say, for the sake of argument, that you're on the fence. I've been talking in definitively. I'm ready to sell. Well, what if you're not sure you want to sell? Can this seller's journey actually be valuable?
Yeah, absolutely. So the seller's journey and the documents that we provide and educational videos that we provide and our newsletters and our social media content, things like that, it's all great in helping you prepare. And it helps you understand what's important in the process and what's not important in the process. So, very often we'll find that more educated buyers and sellers are really good things, right? So the more they understand, the better decisions they can make leading up to the sale. So even if you're just thinking about it and you're not really ready to pull the trigger or you don't want to have a business valuation done yet or whatever the case is, still educate yourself about this process. And very often we'll even have sellers call and say, hey, I'm thinking about making a big investment, or I'm thinking about making an acquisition, or I'm thinking about, this big CapEx strategy or whatever. How will that impact my sellability down the road? Right? Because sometimes it impacts the price, sometimes it impacts the sellability, and sometimes it impacts both. And it can be positive or negative. And so we find that whether you're selling to a third party buyer that you haven't met yet, or you're selling to the buyer that we have interested in buying in the AV industry right now, that a better educated seller is definitely a good thing. You can't go wrong there.
I picked up on that. You said you have an AV buyer. Tell me more about this AV buyer, won't you?
We do. And actually, I got to tell you, nobody wants to sell to a jerk, right? Everybody wants to sell to a really great company or really great people.
Sure.
This particular buyer, we're working on our fourth acquisition with them right now, and we love them. I would say they're in our top 3 favorite clients of all time. They're just awesome people. And so we go out and we try to find really good, solid AV companies for them to buy. They're growing great organically, but they want to also grow through acquisition. And so for the last several years, we've been helping them do that. And so this particular buyer is looking for their next acquisition now, which is exciting. And I'll give you a little bit of a profile of what they're looking for, if that would be helpful, Mark.
Yeah, let me
Okay.
hear it.
So they're looking for sellers that are willing to stay on board and run the company post sale, and also also sellers that want to exit entirely after a transition period. So whether you want to get out or you want to stay in, they're looking for both of those things. They're looking for somebody with at least half of their revenue in the B2B space. So they're not looking for residential AV companies. They're looking for B2B. And most of that revenue should come from enterprise level clients. So clients that are $1 billion or more in sales. That's really who they're looking for. And they've got some favored geographies, but I would say if you fit that profile of being a good, strong company, or even if you've had just a rough couple of years, they're open to that. Whether you want to stay or go is perfectly fine. But if your core is B2B, commercial AV, and you have clients that are enterprise clients, that is absolutely something that I'd like to talk with you about and see if it's going to be a good fit.
That's awesome. Jennifer, thank you for joining us.
Mm-hmm.
This has really been fascinating to me. I'm really not a business guy, and it's very enlightening to see the whole process that you have to go through. Now, remember, everybody, it's not always easy to sell your business for any number of reasons, but Murphy Business Sales can make that process easier, and they can help you navigate that seller's journey. Plus, and this is a big plus, they actually have experience in the pro AV space. So if you're ready to learn more, you can start a confidential conversation at go.murphybusinessofcape.com/AVSCN. Thanks again for listening,
Thanks,
everybody.
Mark. Have a good day.